All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining another episode of Campfire. We are, I think it's 81, apparently 81 episodes. It's been a blessing to have had so many wonderful guests. And today is going to be another of those days with David Hoenisch joining us. David, thank you for taking the time. You've joined Nucamp as an instructor very recently, haven't you?
Yeah, I believe it was March. That's when I
March,
joined.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much when we kicked off the new cybersecurity curriculum. And so today, you and I, we're going to talk about your own journey from, if your LinkedIn is correct, starting in a janitorial world. So I want to know all about that. And then moving up the ranks to be a senior cloud security engineer, and then really wanting to also to talk about cybersecurity itself. I have a long list of 10 topics that are pretty hot in that space right now that we want to discuss, you and I. And then obviously, like always, you can ask us questions. Any question, we have rural anemone here. Yo, hey, yo. Um, if you're seeing us, if you're watching us, you're probably either on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. And chances are you have a chat button or chat input somewhere hidden. And so you can type your question there. This is live, so David and I will do our best to answer it. All right. So without that said, David, would you like to briefly introducing yourself? Where are you coming? Where are you joining us from? And then we'll get going.
Yeah. I'm David, and I'm joining from Idaho. And your comment about my LinkedIn page makes me think that I need to go back and look at my LinkedIn page because I thought the history went further back from that.
It
The
does.
janitorial thing is kind of smack dab in the middle. I actually started out in construction. I worked construction, building trades for about a decade prior to transitioning full time into cybersecurity. And the janitorial stuff was kind of in the middle of that during my time at college. I went for a completely unrelated degree. Ended up not going into that field specifically, but back in when I started at college in 2016, I went to a very small school out in Wyoming. That's when I started getting into information technology, just helping out at the school, volunteering and tinkering around with Windows and Linux. And that's really what started everything off.
Mhm.
Then shortly after COVID hit, it's kind of in this phase of not really knowing what direction I wanted to go with my life, had so many options. And a good friend of mine in Utah, because that's where my wife and I were living at the time, asked me, if you were to do anything, David, because you seem pretty nerdy, what would you do? And I said, well, I've always been interested in the hacking side of things. I probably would do that. He's like, perfect. Stop fitzing around. Go sign up for University of Utah's cybersecurity boot camp and take that. Like, okay. So I signed up that night, got accepted the next morning, and the rest is history. I've never looked back. I love it. Best decision I ever made.
That's
And
awesome.
so, yeah, I
How do
come from
you
a complete.
how
Go
do you
ahead.
get so interested in IT and computers to the point that you're um, drilling into the Linux system, operating system, and not make the shift earlier? Like I've rarely, very rarely heard of someone, playing around with Linux and not pursuing that from the get go. Like so rare.
It is
How
very
did you
rare.
get into Linux? How did you get into Linux in the first place?
It was at school, and I had
Oh,
a friend who was very nerdy and into computers like me. I think on a whim, he was daily driving Linux. I'm like, wow, that sounds cool. Like,
oh
what is
wow.
this?
Yeah.
And from that point on, I bought a Raspberry Pi, and I think that was the first Linux computer that I had. And then from there, I was dual booting Windows and Linux, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I loved it. But I figured spending money on this degree that I'm getting, why transition? Might as well see it
Yeah.
through.
What
And
was the degree at the time?
so I got a degree in biblical studies, so very, very unrelated.
Yeah.
And I don't regret it. Met my wife there.
Yeah.
We've been happily married for 6 years now, and
Great.
yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I've never looked back. I can't imagine really doing anything else. There's been times where I've thought, like, yeah, I might enjoy going back into construction. And then no, I built the house that I'm in right now.
Did you really?
Yeah. So my wife and I, we moved up from Utah about a year and a half ago. We bought a 5.5 acre lot, and
Nice.
her and I built the house that we're in, and it was great. But I
Just the
also,
two of
but I,
you?
yeah,
Did you ask friends to help out? And how long did it take you to build that house? It's
we
crazy.
subbed some of it out.
Yeah.
So we subbed out the initial excavation, part of the foundation, some of the plumbing, electrical.
Yeah.
But other than that, we pretty much built it ourselves. We had help along the way. It wasn't like
Yeah.
it was just us the whole time, but the
Did you have
bulk
to destroy an existing house, or did you just build on fresh ground, I will say?
fresh ground.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Wow, that's huge. How big is the house?
2,500 square feet.
First,
Yeah,
2 floors, 1 floor?
2 floors.
2 floors. That's super.
Yeah,
Okay. Wow. Impressive. Really impressive.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I can imagine. I mean, with that talent, I mean, you could do great in construction as well, right?
yeah. But I love tech, and I literally can't imagine doing anything else. And
That's
I
great.
ended up taking a couple months off from work to build the house,
Hmm.
and I just couldn't wait to get back. I was getting antsy there towards the end. It's like I like swinging a hammer, but there's nothing like slapping some keys.
Yeah. Very true. All right. So you went from biblical studies to knowing how to build a house to a boot camp uh, in cybersecurity with the University of Utah. Was it at the time actually the University of Utah? Was it, or was it already the beginning? Of 2U, and were they subbing?
It
That's
was subbing. So it yeah, I don't really know how it works. It was 2U
yeah,
who was the underlying organization, but
that's
it
right.
was put on through the University of
But you
Utah.
had a good experience with them.
Yeah, it was good.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
And it was right at the beginning of COVID. So you really, I mean, that was perfect for you at the time.
it
Um,
was.
all right, anyone out there, if you have any questions for David or myself, David has joined us as an instructor for cybersecurity since March. We're going to talk about that, but plenty of knowledge, obviously, in that field. So if you have any question about cybersecurity, um, ask them. Type it in the YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook window, and we'll take the time to answer them. All right, so let's talk about cybersecurity. Let's dive right through in. I have, as I said, a ton of questions here from folks. Oh, actually, you know what? Sorry. Before I do that, I almost forgot, but I remember now. I want to talk about you as an instructor very briefly
Okay.
because, um, and I say that all the time, but the feedback from your students is phenomenal. And so I just want to take a moment to recognize that. Let me find that window. Where is it now? There we go. It's here. Okay, so it will be. All right, let me share the screen. Can everyone see it? Yes. Okay. So your average score over 124 ratings is 4.87, which is insane, knowing that the maximum is 5. And I've seen a feedback here that was pretty cool. He is the best, honest, and challenging on mind. Oh, it's gone, but very much lots of fantastic feedback from your students. So on behalf of them and on behalf of Nucamp, I just want to thank you for caring so much and helping them, learn the tricks, tips and tricks of cybersecurity, and hopefully get a job in that space. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. So now let's go back to the topic itself. Um, I want to talk about generative AI, and what you see AI, the kind of impact that you're seeing AI having on cybersecurity. We talk a lot about AI in the coding space, in the education space, but an aspect of it that we're not hearing that much about is how it impacts cybersecurity and the type of threats, and how actually it can help also defend yourself or a company from from attacks. Can you share a little bit of light on AI from the type of attacks and threats that you can see, and then how it can actually help as well?
Wow, coming right out of the gate swinging, huh?
There you go. Let's go.
Yeah, so generative AI is what, 3 seconds old? It's fairly new, and we've seen it over the past. When did ChatGPT 3 come out? Was that 2021? Somewhere
Yeah,
around
that
there.
was it. Yeah.
So generative AI is extremely new. It's in its infancy, and we've seen it just take off. I mean, you're hard pressed to find any product that is not embedding generative AI into their service offerings in some way, shape, or form. And I really have a twofold opinion on generative AI. First of all, I'm optimistic because I see its potential to be a blessing to humanity and to help with human flourishing. And I want to recognize that off the bat because I'm going to then diverge and take somewhat of a negative view on generative AI. But I do see it as overall a good thing that can help humans solve progressively more and more complex problems and to aid in human flourishing. And I think that's good and needs to be recognized. But there's a dark side to artificial intelligence that I largely don't see anyone talking about. Everyone's heard the arguments about, Skynet's about to come online, and
Yeah.
I don't really hold that opinion. I don't think Skynet is going to happen, at least in the way that it was portrayed in the movies. What I do see artificial intelligence doing from a negative standpoint is my going term is cognitive laziness. Let me break down what I mean by that. We're seeing more and more artificial intelligence being used in the development of code. And one of the things that I've strikingly noticed as generative AI is being used for software development is that the people using artificial intelligence largely have no clue what the code does that these AI models are generating. I like to call them copy pasta octopuses. They're just asking ChatGPT, generate XYZ for me, and they're pasting it into their code. And they really don't take the time to understand what actually is happening under the hood. What is this code doing? Why does it work the way it does? Yada, yada, yada. And there's a number of risks in that. I really think that as software developers, as cybersecurity professionals, we need to be religious about truly being disciplined about understanding what our code does and not implicitly trusting some third-party generative AI model to feed us things that are good and right and not going to bite us in the rear down the road. And I just, unfortunately, don't see a lot of that happening right now. Yeah. It's just this endless pursuit of, I don't have to think anymore, and I can just use Cursor AI or whatever the case may be to generate my code for me. And I think that's a huge, huge mistake. Not just from the developer's point of view, where they're robbing themselves of the ability and the privilege, really, of understanding what the code is doing. But you also have to understand that these generative AIs are being trained on insecure code. Let's just take the security aspect of it. The bulk of the code that these generative AI models are being trained on through, say, GitHub is kind of crap code. It's not secure. It's not good. It's messy. And that's the kind of code that is being used to train these artificial intelligence models. And then that's the code that is being generated for you through things like Copilot and Cursor and all these other things. And so we're beginning to see this perpetuation of insecure code. And I'd love to talk about that more and how that impacts cybersecurity as a whole. But it's kind of a scary position to be in.
Yeah, it's a good point.
It makes my job a lot more secure as in job security, because AppSec in the next 5 years is going to explode because you have all of these companies that are just, without even thinking, using AI generated code and not really caring a whole lot about what the code does and how it works. And it's going to lead to this point of everything is broken way more than it is now. And it's going to take a lot of really smart people who actually understand software development and are not relying on ChatGPT or Copilot or these other AI tools in order to be able to do their job.
You're totally right. That I think if you take a person who doesn't understand coding and is not a developer, that person is going to create really bad AI generated code
Mm-hmm.
and may actually not realize it for a while. But at some
Right.
point, it's probably going to hit a wall. At some point, the prompt is still going to be, it doesn't work, and the AI is going to be unable to help anymore because the context is too long.
Right.
On the other hand, someone who really understands coding and really has the patience and takes the time to evaluate the code from the AI will see the benefit of it.
Oh yeah. 100%.
But I think you're right. Like all AI models, for example, have been trained on what a SQL injection is. But
Mm-hmm.
if you ask any AI to produce a piece of code that involves SQL statements, I guarantee it's not going to be secure for SQL injection
Right.
because you didn't ask. If
Right.
you don't ask the AI, make
Right.
sure that it's secure for SQL injections.
Mm-hmm.
By default, yeah, you're right. It's not going to happen. So
Yeah.
it's going to take someone who really has the expertise, the baseline understanding of the systems of development
Yeah.
to bring the best out of AI. Otherwise, you're right. It's a huge risk. It's a huge risk for the corporation.
As a side note, um, I a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I will die on this hill. If you are getting into software development, either as a software developer or a cybersecurity engineer, whatever the case may be, do not, under any circumstances, use artificial intelligence for the first year of whatever
Yeah.
coding language that you're using. Don't do it. Turn off Copilot. Use a basic text editor like VS Code or Sublime. Using artificial intelligence during that first language is going to rob you of one
Yeah.
of the most fundamental skills that is going to augment not just your career but also your entire life. I'm sure you've experienced this, but when I was learning how to code, I noticed that it began to change the way I perceived the world and how I solve problems, not just in code but just in life in general. It changes the way that you think, how you can view a problem and break the problem down into smaller components and then work towards a solution. It literally changes the neural pathways in your brain. That is such a beautiful thing. But when you introduce AI into that, you're going to rob yourself of that because your default is going to be, I don't know how this works or how to fix this particular problem. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to do this for me. And you're circumventing that mental suffering that you need to go through
Yeah.
in order to be able to form those neural
It
pathways.
forces you to be lazy and just, for the sake of speed,
Yes.
produce early results that's are going to bite you
Yeah.
in the end. Hey, I want to take a few of those questions right now. We have Emmanuel here. Cybersecurity is such a broad term. I work for a cybersecurity and IT company as an alumni from Nucamp Web Dev. Congrats, Emmanuel. What cybersecurity niche does Nucamp handle? Can you comment on that? Um, David, I
Yeah.
think you've taught two of the three courses in the curriculum. So can you talk about what you are covering, at least in those two? And I'll
Right.
complement for the last
Right.
one.
hmm Yeah. So I teach cybersecurity foundations and network DevSec, and it's very high level. And you're absolutely right. Cybersecurity is such a broad term that it would be absolutely impossible in what is it, the 14, 16 weeks.
It's 3 times 4 weeks, 12 plus
Okay.
two breaks. So 14 weeks total.
Okay. Yeah. So in 14 weeks, it would be impossible to cover everything. And so what Nucamp is concerned with is giving you and equipping you with the tools that you need in order to be able to venture into one of these niche fields. And so it's very high level. And I think that's necessary because it's just impossible to cover it all. And then equipping you with the tools that you need
Yeah.
to master something more specific.
And I will say, like a lot of entry level cybersecurity programs, we really aim to prepare you to become an analyst first.
Mhm.
So you need to understand the field. You need to understand, what's involved in preparing for your defense, what's involved in planning, how do you audit an environment. You need to know the basic tools, Kali Linux. We've talked about Linux before, the tools that come along with it. And then the last 4 weeks is about ethical hacking. So you're going a little bit deeper, but really it's all about preparing you for that first entry-level job in the space, usually being an analyst, and really having kind of really good knowledge of the tools. Let's answer Jeremy's other question. Jeremy, it's really funny that you're asking if I tried Grok 2, because I just looked into it today, and I kid you not. I wanted to know if Grok 2's APIs were available, and apparently they're not. Or you have to pay the really hefty price of becoming an enterprise customer, and I think it's not the $20
Outrageous.
amount. Yeah, it's kind of outrageous. But I was really curious, because we all know, when you're trying to have ChatGPT produce text, regular content text, it's kind of boring. It's actually very boring. There's very little personality, and I wanted to know how much personality you will get from Grok AI. Couldn't tell though. No access to the APIs. So, and XAI is behind it, or Elon Musk. It is Elon Musk. Ultimately, it is both XAI and Elon Musk. And there's a few things that are being said. I think he has a big data center or cluster of GPUs that went online very recently. Hello, Krista. Good to see you here. Jeremy's comment on allowing liberals out major to code. I think it's a dig at you, David, isn't it?
Might be. I'll take it.
Yeah. All right. And then we have Krista here. Learn how to develop it first. Only once you know the answers can you make sure that the answer is correct. Yep, indeed. And I've noticed myself, it kind of stops being helpful, again, because of the context window that it has. If you're asking it for help with a problem, then you have to ask it again to fix it or twist it or change it. Ultimately, in the end, it's completely lost. And you actually have to start over again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You take pretty much the last output, put it in a new input, summarizes, and then you continue. But it's getting really lost after a while. And so, yeah, you have to know how to detect that as well. I want to continue on generative AI. I want to ask you specifically, in the context of cybersecurity, we've seen deepfakes, we've seen, impersonation, one of the major risk factor in cybersecurity is the social element, right? Social engineering. And we've heard about how AI can mimic the voice, for example, of your boss, calls you up and asks you to do something you will not otherwise do. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see that happening? Like, is that today's problem? Is that tomorrow's problem? How far are we from having an AI call you up and asking you to give you the password because the system is down and you think it's your boss?
Yeah. Well, first of all, even if your boss did call you and ask for the password, don't do it. Especially
actually, right, don't. Yeah.
I don't think it's today's problem.
Yeah.
It's getting close, and I've been seeing more and more recently a lot of the different videos online demonstrating these deep fakes. They're close, but they don't look human. They have the features of a human, but they're too perfect. They're too plasticky. They lack that human element of imperfections and fluctuations and all of that. So, and it's hard for an artificial intelligence to mimic that. And so I would see it as being definitely in our near future, but I don't think it's today's problem.
And do you see cybersecurity vendors, ISVs that are producing the tools to help you respond to those? Do you see AI helping them build better tools at this time, or is that still also a little bit far away?
I go back and forth on this. So Intel, for example, recently developed some tooling, like in the past year, that helps detect deepfakes. And the way they're doing it is by analyzing the blood vessels that are visible through skin.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And they're able to detect when that's absent and when it's present, and be able to make determinations based off of whether you're human or not, based off of those factors. I think that's a huge industry right now. It's probably going to be a multi-billion-dollar problem that if you can figure out a way to solve, you stand to make a buttload of money. But we're starting to see a lot more companies developing the tools to do that. As far as helping defenders, I flip-flopping back and forth on this. On the plus side, it helps us move faster. So, for example, the company that I work for, we're an Azure shop, and we're not using Azure Copilot. But one of the cool things about Azure Copilot, as you're looking at it, or is it called Copilot for Defender? I forget what it's called, but it's a generative AI model that integrates into Microsoft's default security tooling. Mm-hmm. And it allows you to ask natural language questions of your data, which I think can be really, really useful, especially for juniors who don't have enough years of experience under their belt to understand a lot of the more advanced SQL or KQL queries that you might need to do. But this goes back to the whole problem that I discussed with coding, is when you have a junior person that you are allowing to use artificial intelligence due to lack of experience, you rob them of that ability to gain that experience and to truly understand and know what's going on under the hood. And I think that risk and danger applies not just to software development, but to cybersecurity as well. The other element of this is that as an industry, we have zero freaking clue how to secure generative AI models. We don't know.
Yeah.
This was actually admitted at DEF CON this past year. Nobody understands how to actually secure these models. And yet we see companies just left and right embedding generative AI models into their product. And on the one hand, I want to be excited because it's cool. And again, it has the ability to help us. On the other hand, we're just introducing in a whole host of unknown risks.
Yeah, it's crazy when you say it like that. It could be the next Trojan horse.
I think within the next 5 years, what you're going to see is cybersecurity jobs go down for the next 5 years ish, because companies, I think so. Because companies think that they can replace actual human talent with generative AI models, but it's going to be a bell curve where it's going to go down, where everything's going to implode very, very soon, and then jobs are going to skyrocket because companies now realize it was probably a mistake to, without understanding how to actually secure these models,
do the work, and that's going to bite them back.
Again, I want to be excited about it, but it's like the industry as a whole just wants to move so fast, and you really need to take calculated steps, and nobody's taking calculated steps. It's a money game. Nobody wants to miss out. And so we're just embedding artificial intelligence in everything.
Hey, give me 1 sec. I just heard the ring. I want to make sure that someone is taking that at the door.
Okay. Hey guys, how's it going? I'm going to start reading through these comments now. Yeah, Jeremy's comment, AI has the potential to take over a lot of jobs, even psychologists, medical professionals, teachers, very disruptive. It's true on the one hand. However, who actually wants to go to an AI psychologist? That just sounds freaky to me. As uncomfortable as it is to disclose all your deepest, darkest secrets to another human, I don't know that I really would want to do so to an artificial intelligence model, where all that data then is being stored somewhere and someone could have access to it. That would be interesting. I am really excited though about the medical implications of artificial intelligence models and our ability to use AI to look for cures for things
There
like.
you go. It's the very first time I did that, and I truly apologize. It's been you were in the middle of something. You were. It's USPS who kept telling us that they had something that to deliver to us, so I had to sign.
Oh, no
Anyway,
problem.
what were you guys talking about without me?
Oh, I was reading Jeremy's comment from 229 about
Okay,
AI's
yes,
disruptive
yeah,
nature, and I was just saying that one of the most exciting things to me about AI is the medical research that we could potentially accelerate with that, especially once quantum computing becomes a thing and you can
yeah.
combine quantum computing with artificial intelligence, and it'd be cool to start seeing cures for a lot of diseases start to be found.
Exactly. And I see Amelia is here. Hello, hello. Zandra is here as well. Awesome. And then I just want to address Krista's comment about me having my own impersonator. I have my own AI avatar that speaks on some of the videos that we've recorded. And actually, I was about to make a joke that right now this is the AI Ludo avatar speaking, but I don't think you would expect the AI avatar to run back and forth. So that joke doesn't work anymore. But yeah, all right. Well, thank you for thank you for looking after the audience, David. Let me pick up on Jeremy's comment here. Asian countries like Singapore use AI to detect cancers early, for example. Okay, that's what you guys talked about. All right. Cool. Thank you. Let's talk about the skills gap. You you were there. You were in the shoes of the students that you're teaching right now. Um, you've learned pretty much what they've learned, what they're learning right now. How? What do you think students that are just starting to learn cybersecurity need to keep in mind when they're going through a curriculum like Nucamp's, in terms of what they're supposed or expected to know at the end, and what kind of jobs they should be seeking in the cybersecurity space?
Sure. Best piece of advice I can give to you is to be patient, because breaking into tech, cybersecurity, software development, whatever the case may be, it is going to take time. It really, really will. I remember when I was first starting out, I would watch guys on YouTube like, I don't know if you guys know of John Hammond. He's a pretty well-known cybersecurity YouTuber. And there's some other ones out there. Now just look at these guys, and they're flying through the terminal. They know exactly what they're looking at when they're reviewing malicious binaries and doing code reviews and yada, yada, yada. It was mind blowing to me. And it took a couple of years of me having to go through the grind myself. And then I realized that when you see people like that, all you see is the results of years and years and years of faithful, keeping your hand at the plow kind of hard work. And most of us, I know I'm guilty of this, we want the results now. We think that, I can take a boot camp and I'm going to walk out a blazing professional. And you'll certainly walk out a lot more skilled than you were when you came in. But it's going to take years of hard work in order to see that realized. There's a book by Robert Greene, and I haven't read it, but I've read excerpts from it and watched videos with Robert Greene. But he makes the claim that to truly master a skill takes about 10,000 hours of doing whatever thing. That's a long time. That's a long time. But the beautiful thing is that if you can be faithful at practicing and learning, and you're willing to take the time and do the hard work that it's going to take in order to be able to master your craft, you will be in the top 1% of most people. 100%, you'll be in the top 1% of most people. Yeah, that's the book right there.
That's the book you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert Greene, Mastery, How to Achieve Mastery in Any Skill.
And all of his books are really
Yeah.
good. He's got a lot of really great ones out there. So that's the first piece of advice: is be willing to work hard, because it's going to take time. And as Western folks, as I think most of us are here, we're not really good at being patient with ourselves and seeing results over the long haul. But if you can develop that kind of skill, it'll serve you well now, and it will serve you well in the future. The other thing is
So,
that
yeah.
most people come into tech because they see the amount of money that can be made here, and there is a ton of money to be made here. If you can master your craft, you can easily make six figures, and oftentimes, sometimes seven figures. That's not at all outside of the realm of possibility, but that takes time. And you're probably not going to see that level of income out of the gate. But again, keep your hand at the plow. If you want to make big money, you have to be good at solving big problems, because that's why companies hire you. They have a problem and they need human talent to solve that problem. And that's not something that you develop overnight. That's something that comes with time. And so if you can get good at solving big problems, there's big money to be made.
And there's a ton of material out there, and I would say case studies where you can really go deep into studying what a big problem looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the curriculum we've talked about what happened at NGM casinos in Las Vegas last year. It's one of the case study, right? And there's major breaches like this one, and those companies, they're looking for the person that's going to help them get away without having to pay the 10 million or 10 billion, ransom.
Yeah.
Because they're all trying to do that. They're kind of, they have the knife under their neck, and they're like, how can I not pay and have my system running? And if you're that person, I think you're totally right. The seven figure is yours.
Yeah.
I want to actually ask you to talk about your own journey in that space. I think what you shared with us is from very early, you had that passion for tech, and you invested your personal time with Linux, and I'm sure that helped you, be successful with cybersecurity program and finding a job. But even that, I mean, tell us about how you got your first job in the space. Like on your resume at that moment in time, you only had a bootcamp certificate and your passion to go for.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find that position? What kind of position was it? And how do you think that you can extrapolate that to provide feedback for the student that are hoping for the same outcome?
Right. I want to push back on that just a little bit, because one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I was first trying to break into cybersecurity was from a girl by the name of Naomi Buckwater. Man, butchered her name. I'm sorry. I'll
Naomi,
find it.
if you're listening, please forgive David.
But one of the pieces of advice that she gave me was to leverage the heck out of personal projects. This is something I really encourage my students to do as well.
Yeah.
There's a ton of personal projects that you can take on when you're, especially in software development. The software development's a bit easier because it's fairly trivial, not easy, but fairly trivial to build web applications, for example, and to put that online and to demonstrate to potential employers that you actually have the skills that you purport on your resume. Cybersecurity is a little bit harder, but not impossible. And so finding personal projects to engage in that you can put online, put on GitHub, whatever the case may be, to demonstrate to potential employers that you really do have the skills that you're claiming to have, where they actually can go and look at the results of what it is that you've done. That speaks volumes. And over the years, as I've progressed in occupational cybersecurity, I've become a huge believer in that. I stand by this, I would way rather hire a person who has taken the disciplined time on their own on the side to do personal projects than to hire a college graduate. All a college graduate has to show most of the time for the 4 years, whatever that they've spent, is a piece of paper that you could have easily bullcrapped your way through. I mean, let's be honest. Unfortunately, a lot of the Western education, there's no guarantee once you come out of a university that you actually know the things that you claim to know. There's any number of conditions that could lend to the fact that you just kind of partied your way through. And that's not the kind of people that we need in cybersecurity right now. We need skilled people. And I think some of the most skilled people that I've seen and that I've observed in the industry are those who they don't have a college degree. They may even be a high school dropout, but you know, they do have an incredible amount of drive and they're doing stuff on the side on their own. And they actually have results to put on their resume, even if it's not a piece of paper or a degree. I think that speaks much higher volumes than any kind of degree that you can get. And I'm not saying degrees aren't valid, but personal projects, I think, speak, in my eyes, bigger volumes than a college degree. And that's as someone who within the next year or so is going to be hiring at my company some junior cybersecurity people. And that's the thing that I'm going to be looking for, is people who have on their resume personal projects to show that they actually can do the job.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Just want to say a few, just want to bring Emilia's point here, which feels great. Looking forward to having you, Emilia. Maybe you'll have David as your teacher. I want to ask you about those personal projects. And you're right. It's super easy to create personal projects when you're just developing, right? You write a piece of code, you publish it to, Netlify or AWS or Firebase. You can just do it on your own. There's super straightforward. You don't need a ton of resources. What does it look like in the cybersecurity space? What would a typical personal project look like in the cybersecurity space?
I think the best place to start is to have a personal blog and to journal your journey in learning the trade.
Yeah.
To journal the things that you're learning, because I guarantee you, I know I was this way when I was first starting out. I was reading the blogs and articles of people who were just 3 years ahead of me.
Yeah.
And you have a unique ability in your current position of not knowing a whole lot and having to learn all the things new and fresh to be able to explain those kinds of things in terms that other people 2 years down the road in your shoes right now, you can explain it to them in a way that they can understand. Unfortunately, and I think this is to our detriment, as you progress in your career and become more and more technically knowledgeable, it gets harder and harder for you to explain those things at a beginner level because you're just inundated in this deep, complex technical world. I think that's to our shame. I think that even as we progress, we still need to be able to explain those complex topics in simple terms. But you have a unique ability.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, showing that you understand by pretty much reframing those problems in your own words and reframing what you're learning from that. I would just add to that. In our curriculum, we have tons of hands-on labs. Record a video of you doing that.
Yeah.
Record a video of you, hardening the Linux system and what you're doing and why you're doing it. Narrate that. Maybe like your instructor will narrate it. And I think it can actually show that, hey, you really understand what's going on here. You understand just, you have the text version, the blog, you can have the video version. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it works.
And being able to explain why you're doing the things that you're doing. Yeah. Again, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, it is so incredibly important for you to develop a deep understanding of how code works, how software works, how cybersecurity works. You need to understand these things. You need competence. You'll hear a lot of people in this industry kind of smugly and proudly say, nobody knows what we're doing. We're just faking it until we make it. And to a certain extent, that's unavoidable because we're always going to be venturing into territory that we don't know and understand. We're having to learn new things. But that is not an excuse for not developing deep understanding of particular facets and facts and truths, whatever the case may be. Don't let people's smug response of nobody knows what they're doing. That's patently false because that's why you were hired, right? You have some element of knowing what you're doing. It may not be all that it needs to be. there's room to grow into infinity, but you absolutely need to develop competence in your craft. So being able to explain, when you're doing Linux hardening and you're disabling root login, why are you doing that? Why is that important? Or you're requiring people to authenticate with cryptographic keys as opposed to passwords. Why are you doing that? Why is that important? That is really, really critical. And then document that, blog that. That's something that you can do. Another element of this, and this kind of goes into another aspect of cybersecurity that we could discuss, but one of the things that I really bucked and cowed at when I was first breaking into the industry, I'll be honest, I kind of chose cybersecurity because I didn't want to learn how to code. And I'm ashamed to admit.
There's a ton of students that are like, should I do coding? Should I do cybersecurity? I think one who's maybe actually listening to us right now started with coding, said, I'm not sure. Let's do cybersecurity instead.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think those are the two paths that most people are actually looking at and like, I don't know.
Yeah. But I've become convinced. It took me a couple years to finally grasp this. And the thing that kind of flipped the switch for me, I was listening to a talk by, what's his name? He's a SANS instructor, and I forget his name. Anyway, he was giving a talk on DNS threat hunting. And he made this offhand comment where he said, if you have nobody in your SOC, a SOC is a security operations center, that does not know how to code, you're doing it wrong. I'm like, well, I mean,
does not know how to code?
Yes. He's like,
you have to have someone who does not know how to code.
No, you need to have someone who does know how to code.
Who does know how to code.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it wrong. I want to be a good cybersecurity operations guy. Like, I'm going to learn this. And I'd been dabbling in like Ruby and Python for probably 5 years up to that point. But every time I try, I'm like, this is too hard. I don't really want to do it. And so anytime I had anything that I needed to automate, I was doing it in PowerShell and Bash, and it works, but it's not really a proper programming language. Mm-hmm. But from that point on, I made the commitment that anytime I need to do anything coding wise, I am going to use Python. I just decided that that's the language that I was going to start with. And it took a year of really struggling. Like, I really struggled to wrap my head around the concepts, but like, you know what? I'm just going to stick with this for at least a year. I'm telling you, on the other side of that, whenever I get to code now, that is the favorite part, my favorite part of the job. I love it. I cannot get enough of it. It is, I just absolutely love software security, and everything that goes into that. And then
is it the automation that it allows you to do? Is it like all of a sudden you multiply what you can accomplish?
There's definitely elements of that, but there's also just the beauty of being able to have a problem. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be an automation problem. For example, I built a system service 2 months ago because we had a backup service that we needed to ingest security logs and ship them into our SIM stack. And we didn't, like, there was no native integration. And so I built an application that could sit in between, pull logs from the backup service, and then ship them off to the SIM. There is something incredibly beautiful about having a problem, being able to sit down, break the problem down into manageable steps, and then to solve that. It is incredibly exhilarating. I love it. And I've recently realized, and I've heard other people corroborate this as well, that cybersecurity professionals, even though you may not need to know how to code to break into the field, you're going to reach a point in your career where you have no other option, if you truly want to master your craft, but to learn how to code. And what finally switched the light bulb for me was realizing that everything that we do as cybersecurity professionals is downstream from what a developer did last week, a year ago, 2 years ago. Everything that we do is downstream from that. Everything. If there was no developers writing code, all you would have is sand that's been shoved into silicon that's just sitting there not doing anything. The silicon needs software in order to be able to instruct it and tell it what to do. And that's why we have email and computers and all of these different services that we've hodgepodged together into systems that now we need to figure out how to secure. So everything that you do is downstream from developers. And so it follows then that if I truly want to know and understand how to secure these applications, these systems, and the data, lives, and information that they house, I have to understand how software works. I have to understand how code works. I have to understand how software developers think and operate. And it has really changed how I view the cybersecurity world. And it's less of this siloed discipline of, I mean, you have software developers and you have cybersecurity people, and they kind of, go at it sometimes. And we hope that in the end, after we've bickered and fought for months on end, that whatever pops out the other side is magically secure. That's not reality. There's a lot of work.
A lot of people are um, creating analogies between building your house and building software. That you have a problem, you need a house, you have to envision the problem, the solution. You have to create you have to architect your house, you have to know what is going to go where. You haven't done anything yet, but you kind of have an idea of what needs to be created, and then piece by piece you create those things. Each one of those has its own challenges.
Right.
It's not going to work for a while, and then you're going to create it, you're going to build the foundation, and you're going to find a huge amount of satisfaction at the end of that. And then you're going to attack the next layer, and then the next layer, and then right. Don't I mean, you've experienced both. Do you find that true, that analogy?
Oh, absolutely. And note that in the case of building a house, you're not building a structure and then figuring out how to make it safe so that it doesn't fall in on you.
Yeah.
The safety aspect, the security of the house is an attribute of you having built it. There's a lot of really good work being done by the guys over at NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And a couple of years ago, they published a 2-volume series. This is NIST 800-160. And it's all about systems security engineering. And the main premise that they drive home is that security is an attribute of an engineered system, meaning that it is not a siloed discipline that we do outside of the design, the building, the maintaining, and the retirement of a given system. It is something that is woven into the very fabric of the system itself.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what we need to account for, what we want to achieve in security is penetration resistance, damage limitation, and system resilience. We want to prevent breaches from happening. But that's often where people stop. As long as I can prevent a breach from happening, the system is secure. That's patently false. First of all, because it's impossible to have a cohesively, inherently secure system. There's going to be vulnerabilities in there that you don't know about. There was a vulnerability just disclosed yesterday in Linux in the CUPS, which is the common Unix printer service that is like ubiquitous across the internet, and it allows arbitrary code execution. It ranked a 9.9 out of 10 on the CVE scale, which is not unprecedented, but it's not common to have something that severe. So you're going to have vulnerabilities that are inherent in the system. And so it's not a matter of if someone can break in, it's a matter of when. And so once somebody breaks in, you need to be able to limit the damage. How do we contain the blast radius, as we call it, to prevent that the damage from spreading to peripheral systems? How can we contain it, very close to the epicenter? And then how can we continue to operate even in a degraded state? And those 3 things are the very 3 things that are completely lacking across the industry. Everyone starts and stops with penetration resistance. Nobody cares about damage limitation and system resilience. And that is why, frankly, blue teams are getting owned. We have nothing on the red teams and their ability to cause havoc and wreck systems and lives and data. Wow. And so one of the things that I'm really passionate about moving forward is seeing cybersecurity not divorced and siloed from the software development process or in systems engineering, but seeing it integrated together where both disciplines, though unique and share similar attributes and desired outcomes, we're working together to design demonstrably secure systems. Not just we're making the claim that you can trust it, when really the code is crap and there's zero chance that it has the ability to withstand advanced persistent threats for any length of time. But to design systems that are truly demonstrably trustworthy, not just we're making claims of trust, but we can prove that you can trust this. And I think that comes by engineering systems as opposed to securing them. I mean, securing them.
Secure by default, pretty much.
Yes.
From the engineering to, So the question from Rathani here that I'm showing is security mostly about creating a safe environment so that hackers can't reach it? I think the answer is actually incredibly more complex than it could appear. But how would you answer it? How would you answer that question?
Right. No, I would say technically yes, but the easy answer is just to say no. Yeah. When we're designing systems and applications that we're going to expose to the internet, the worldwide network, and it is a vast and varied threat landscape, right? You are literally putting your thing out into the Wild West. One of the things that we've done in the boot camp is I spin up a purposely misconfigured server, and we just stick it on the internet. And I have it hooked up to a SIM tool, and we just watch as these different attacks come through. We actually let the hackers breach so that we can observe how they act in the environment, what kind of malware they leave, all that good stuff. It is impossible for you to divorce yourself from presence of threat actors, and we don't want to. We want our information systems to be able to withstand attacks, but it is impossible for us to shield it from them. Mm-hmm. So one of the definitions of security in NIST 800-160 is that security is the state of being free from the conditions that cause asset loss with unacceptable consequences, not the causes of asset loss. So I would say that the cause of an asset loss might be the threat actor. They're acting upon a system, causing it to malfunction. It errors out, whatever the case may be. But we're ensuring that it is free from the conditions that could allow such a cause to take place. And I think there's a subtle but very important distinction there of we can't completely shield a system from threat actors. It's going to be exposed to them, and we need to figure out how can we make sure that system is free from those conditions that cause that asset loss.
So hackers are going to reach those systems. It's really making sure that you're in control of the multiple layers that sit between them and what you've just described as immeasurable loss, right? And are you able to kind of keep those shields up?
Yes.
So that it remains contained.
Exactly. So in the company that I work for, we do work primarily for the Air Force in aerospace engineering. And one of the contracts that we have is on the A-10 Warthog. And I don't know if you guys know anything about the A-10 Warthog, but it is a freaking awesome plane. It is clad in titanium plates. The pilot sits in this bulletproof coffin, almost with bulletproof glass.
Careful not to share too much, David. I don't know what you can share, what is public, what is not. So be careful there.
This is completely unclassified.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, completely unclassified. And you can look up pictures about the A-10 and specifically look for pictures of a damaged airframe. The amount of damage that the A-10 can take on and still be able to fly is astronomically just mind-blowing. You can have entire sections of the wing blown off and the thing can still fly and complete its mission. And so the point that I'm driving home there that I use within the company is that it would be pointless to design an aircraft like that that's designed to engage and destroy enemy tanks. It would be stupid for us to create that aircraft and then just completely shield it from the enemy, right? We're not going to expose it at all. But that's the whole point of the system. It needs to be in the field providing air support for troops on the ground. And so what do? We accept the fact this is going to be exposed to threats, and we design the system so that as best as possible, we can provide penetration resistance, right? It's clad in titanium. It's got a bulletproof casing around the pilot. We can protect the pilot. And then we have damage limitations. So there's redundant hydraulics and stuff in there. So you can lose entire controller systems, like for your ailerons or your rudders, and you've got backups that can then take over. And then we have system resilience. Even in the state of being completely blown to smithereens, it can still get home. It can still complete its mission. And that's exactly what we're trying to do in cybersecurity.
That's a great analogy. I love it.
It's going to be exposed to threat actors. You cannot prevent that. You don't want to needlessly expose it, but the point is not to shield it from them. The point is to have a system that has penetration resistance, damage limitation, and system resilience. And that's how you design and deploy demonstrably trustworthy systems, which is what the world needs, not this widget-based hodgepodge security of doing everything after the fact, but integrating it into the very engineering life cycle itself.
Wow. Hey, David, this is fascinating. And I'm like, we could stay here for like a couple more hours. I really, really thank you. I can't. But wow, it went super fast. We may actually plan for a follow-up, because I feel like, I had 10 questions in my list, and I think we got two of those. Thank you so much for taking the time. If you have one last thing that you would like to share with the audience, with your students, I think you're going to be with them tomorrow morning during workshop time. What would it be?
Be patient with yourself. It's going to feel like drinking from a fire hose. There's going to be a lot of information that you're going to need to absorb, but be okay with the fact that it's not going to make sense at first. Exposure is your best friend. Like if you're learning French, right? I would want to expose myself to French-speaking people like Ludo, and it's going to take time. But if you stick with it, you will find great reward in the journey you're about to embark on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, David. Really, really appreciate. Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you're on Discord, you can ask your question to David. If you're already a student, let's continue the conversation. Otherwise, we'll figure out if we can do another one like that. Thank you, everyone. Take care.